The starship Liberty Dawn cut through the darkness of space like a silver needle. Inside the command deck, Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the alien world grow larger on the main screen. His heart was beating fast, though he tried not to show it. "We're approaching Ilithara now, sir," said the pilot from her station. "The Zinthari traffic control is guiding us in." Jake nodded. He was 32 years old, tall with dark hair and steady brown eyes. For the past 6 months he had prepared for this moment. Humanity was about to make formal contact with the Zinthari Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. And he was leading the mission. "How are you feeling, Captain?" asked Dr. Sophie Grant, stepping up beside him. She was the team's medical officer, a woman in her late 20s with red hair tied back in a practical bun. Her green eyes showed concern. "Nervous," Jake admitted quietly. "This could change everything for humanity. If we make a good impression, we gain a powerful ally. If we mess this up," he didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what was at stake. The Vrax Collective had been pushing into human territory for years. Humanity needed friends out here in the vast darkness of space. "You'll do fine," Sophie said with a small smile. "You always do." Ben Carter, the team's linguist, looked up from his tablet. He was a young man with glasses and an eager expression. "I've been studying their greeting customs. We should be prepared for anything. The Zinthari value tradition highly." The fourth member of their team, Kate Sullivan, checked her weapon one more time. As security chief, she trusted nothing and no one until proven otherwise. She was a former Marine with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. "Just remember, we're walking into unknown territory. Stay alert." The Liberty Dawn descended through Ilithara's atmosphere. Jake watched in wonder as the alien world revealed itself. The sky was a pale purple color. Below them, a massive city of crystal towers stretched across the landscape, glittering in the light of the planet's twin suns. It was beautiful in a way that took his breath away. "They're more advanced than we thought," Sophie whispered. The ship landed in a designated area outside the Imperial Palace. As Jake and his team prepared to leave the ship, he straightened his uniform one last time. It was dark blue with Earth symbols on the shoulders. Simple but dignified. "Remember," Jake said to his team, "we're representatives of humanity. Be respectful, be honest, and follow my lead." They walked down the ramp together. The air outside was warm and had a strange, almost musical quality to it. Jake couldn't quite explain it, but everything seemed to hum with a very low frequency that he felt more than heard. A tall figure waited for them. He wore flowing robes of deep purple and gold. His skin was pale blue and his eyes were a striking silver color. He looked human in most ways, but these small differences reminded Jake that they were truly aliens. "Welcome to Ilithara," the man said in perfect English. His voice was smooth and cultured. "I am Chancellor Darius Thorne, Chief Advisor to Empress Lyra Vane. Her Majesty is pleased to receive you." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly, as Ben had instructed. "I am Captain Jake Morrison. On behalf of humanity, I bring greetings and hope for friendship between our peoples." Thorne's expression was unreadable. "Come, the Empress awaits in the reception hall. There is much to discuss." They followed him through the palace grounds. Jake tried not to stare at everything around him, but it was difficult. The building seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Gardens grew with plants in colors he had never seen before. Strange creatures that might have been birds flew overhead, singing in harmonies that seemed impossible. "Your Empress is young." "I understand," Jake said as they walked. "She is 22 years old," Thorne replied. "She ascended to the throne 4 years ago after her parents died in a tragic accident. That must have been difficult for her." Thorne glanced at him. "The Empress is stronger than she appears, Captain. Do not make the mistake of underestimating her." There was something in the Chancellor's tone that Jake couldn't quite identify. A warning? A test? He filed the information away for later. They entered the palace through massive doors that opened silently. Inside, the halls were even more magnificent. The walls seemed to shift with patterns of light. Guards stood at attention, wearing armor that looked both decorative and functional. They carried weapons Jake didn't recognize. Finally, they reached a great hall. It was circular, with a high domed ceiling that showed the stars above through some kind of transparent material. At the far end, on a throne of white crystal, sat the Empress. Jake's first impression was surprise. He had expected someone who looked powerful and imposing, Instead, he saw a young woman who seemed almost fragile. She had pale skin like Thorn, but her hair was long and silver, falling past her shoulders. She wore a gown of shimmering white that seemed to be made of starlight itself. Then he noticed her eyes. They were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. "She was blind, Your Majesty," Thorn announced. "The human delegation has arrived." The Empress rose from her throne with perfect grace. She moved down the steps toward them, and Jake realized something strange. Despite being blind, she walked with complete confidence, never stumbling or hesitating. It was as if she could see exactly where she was going. "Captain Morrison," she said, and her voice was like music. "I have been looking forward to this meeting." Jake bowed deeper this time. "The honor is ours, Your Majesty." She came closer, and suddenly she reached out her hand. Jake froze, unsure what to do. Her fingers found his face with impossible accuracy. Touching his cheek gently, he felt a strange tingle where she touched him, like a small electric current. Lyra's unseeing eyes seemed to look directly into his. "Interesting," she murmured. "Very interesting indeed." She stepped back and addressed the gathered court. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "I have made my decision. Captain Jake Morrison will be my chosen consort. We will be wed tonight according to the ancient traditions." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Jake felt his world tilt. He looked at Sophie, who had gone pale. Kate's hand moved toward her weapon instinctively. Ben looked like he might faint. "Your Majesty," Jake managed to say, his mind racing. "I don't understand." "We've only just met." Lyra smiled slightly. "It is our custom, Captain. When important visitors come to our world, the ruler may choose a consort from among them as a sign of alliance and good faith. I have chosen you." Thorn stepped forward. "The ceremony must take place tonight before the twin moons rise. If you refuse, Captain Morrison, it will be seen as a grave insult. The alliance between our peoples will be difficult to achieve." Jake's thoughts spun wildly. This was impossible. He had come here to negotiate a treaty, not to marry an alien empress he had just met. But he could see the trap clearly. Refuse, and humanity would lose this chance at an alliance they desperately needed. Accept, and his entire life would change forever. He looked at Lyra again. Despite her youth and her blindness, she stood with dignity and strength. There was something in the way she held herself that spoke of great loneliness, and when she had touched his face, he had felt something, a connection he couldn't explain. "May I have a moment to consult with my team?" Jake asked. "Of course," Lyra said, "but only a moment. Time is short." Jake gathered his team in a corner of the hall. Sophie grabbed his arm. "Jake, you can't be seriously considering this. We don't know anything about their marriage customs. This could be dangerous." "If I refuse, the alliance is dead," Jake said quietly. "And humanity needs this alliance. The Vrax won't stop pushing into our space. We need powerful friends." Kate shook her head. "This feels like a trap. Why would she choose you specifically? Something isn't right here." "Maybe it's a test," Ben suggested, "to see if we're really committed to friendship with them." Jake looked back at the Empress. She stood patiently, her expression calm. But he thought he saw something in her posture. Desperation, hope. He made his decision. "I'll do it. I'll go through with the wedding." "Jake," Sophie started. "It's my choice," he said firmly. "Contact Earth Command. Tell them what's happening. But I'm doing this for humanity's future." He walked back to the Empress and bowed. "Your Majesty, I accept your offer. I will marry you tonight." For the first time, Lyra's face showed real emotion. Relief washed over her features. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. You have no idea what this means." Thorn clapped his hands. "Then it is settled. Prepare for the ceremony. Tonight, humanity and the Zenthari Empire will be joined through marriage." As servants rushed to make preparations, Jake caught the Empress looking in his direction with her unfocused eyes, and he wondered what he had just gotten himself into. The next few hours passed in a blur. Jake found himself swept away by servants who spoke little English, taken to chambers where he was dressed in traditional Zenthari wedding clothes. The garments were surprisingly comfortable, made of fabric that seemed to shift colors in the light, moving from deep blue to silver and back again. Sophie managed to find him before the ceremony. She looked worried as she checked him over with her medical scanner. "Your heart rate is elevated, but that's to be expected." "Jake, are you sure about this?" "No," he admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." "Did you reach Earth Command?" "Yes, they're concerned, but they trust your judgment. They said to proceed carefully and report back as soon as possible." She paused. I did some research on Xanthari marriage customs. Once you're married, it's extremely difficult to undo. Their society takes these bonds very seriously. Jake nodded slowly. I figured as much. What else should I know? The ceremony involves something called a mind touch. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it seems to be important to them. Be prepared for anything unusual. Before Jake could ask more questions, Chancellor Thorne appeared at the door. It is time, Captain Morrison. The Empress awaits. The ceremony took place in a great circular chamber open to the night sky. The twin moons of Ilithara were just beginning to rise, casting pale light over everything. Hundreds of Xanthari nobles had gathered, all dressed in their finest clothes. They watched Jake with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Kate and Ben stood at the edge of the crowd, both looking tense. Kate's hand rested near her weapon, though Jake had made her promise not to start an incident unless absolutely necessary. Then the Empress entered, and Jake forgot to breathe. Lyra wore a gown that seemed to be made of pure light. It flowed around her like water, shifting through every color imaginable. Her silver hair was adorned with crystals that caught the moonlight. Despite her blindness, she walked forward with perfect confidence, her movements graceful and precise. She came to stand before Jake in the center of the chamber. A priestess in flowing robes of gold approached, carrying a small box made of crystal. "We are gathered," the priestess announced in a voice that carried across the chamber, "to witness the joining of Empress Lyra Vane of the Xanthari Empire and Captain Jake Morrison of humanity. This union will bind not just two individuals but two peoples, in friendship and alliance." The ceremony was beautiful and strange. The priestess spoke words in the Xanthari language that sounded like singing. She opened the crystal box and removed two pieces of what looked like living thread, glowing with soft blue light. "Give me your hands," the priestess instructed. Jake held out his hands, and Lyra did the same. Their fingers touched, and Jake felt that same electric tingle he had experienced when she touched his face earlier. It was stronger now, almost uncomfortable. The priestess wrapped the glowing threads around their joined hands, binding them together. The moment the threads touched both of them, Jake gasped. It felt like something opened in his mind, a door he hadn't known existed. For just a second he felt something, emotions that weren't his own. Loneliness, determination, fear, hope. "The bond is formed," the priestess declared. "From this moment forward you are joined in heart and mind. What affects one affects the other. May your union bring prosperity to both your peoples." The Xanthari nobles began to hum, a sound that grew into a complex harmony. The crystal palace itself seemed to resonate with the sound. Jake felt dizzy, overwhelmed by sensations he couldn't name. Then it was over. The threads dissolved into light and faded away, but Jake could still feel something, a faint presence at the edge of his thoughts that hadn't been there before. "It is done," Lyra said softly, and for the first time since they met, she smiled. It transformed her face, making her look younger and more vulnerable. "We are married, Captain Morrison." "Jake," he said automatically. "You can call me Jake." "Jake," she repeated as if testing the name. "And you may call me Lyra when we are alone." The celebration that followed was overwhelming. Food and drink were served on tables that seemed to grow from the floor. Music played by instruments Jake couldn't identify filled the air. Nobles approached to offer congratulations, though Jake could see that many were not entirely pleased by this development. Ben managed to get close to him at one point. "That was incredible," the linguist said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Did you feel that connection? I've read about Xanthari's psychic abilities, but I never thought—" "Later," Jake said quietly. "We'll talk about it later." As the evening wore on, Jake found himself growing tired. The strain of the day was catching up with him. Finally, Chancellor Thorne approached and said, "It is time for you to retire to the Empress's private chambers. That is customary after the ceremony." Jake's stomach tightened. He looked for Lyra and found her waiting by a doorway, alone for the first time since the ceremony began. She seemed to sense his gaze, turning her head in his direction even though she couldn't see him. They walked together through the crystal halls in silence. Servants bowed as they passed. Finally, they reached a set of doors that opened into a suite of rooms more beautiful than anything Jake had ever seen. The walls were transparent in places, showing the stars outside. A fountain of light flowed in one corner, making music as it moved. Once the doors closed behind them, Lyra's posture changed. The formal, regal bearing fell away, and she suddenly looked very tired. She moved to a chair and sat down carefully. "You don't have to pretend with me," she said quietly. "I know this marriage wasn't what you wanted. It wasn't what either of us wanted, really." Jake didn't know what to say to that. He moved to another chair and sat down, keeping a respectful distance. "Why did you choose me? We'd never met before today." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned her unfocused eyes in his direction. "Can I tell you a secret, Jake? Something that no one else knows?" "Of course, and I'm not entirely blind. Not in the way you think." She stood and moved closer to him. 4 years ago, when the accident killed my parents, it did terrible damage to my eyes. The doctors said I would never see again in the normal way. And they were right. But something else happened. Something unexpected. She reached out and touched his face again, and Jake felt that electric tingle. "I developed what my people call the sight beyond sight. I can't see colors or light anymore. But I can see energy, life force, the emotional resonance of living things. To me, the world is painted in patterns of feeling and thought." Jake stared at her, stunned. "That's how you move around so easily. You can sense where everything is." "Yes, and when you arrived today, I saw something in you that I've never seen in any Xanthari. Your energy pattern is different." She struggled for words. Cleaner somehow, more pure, without the complicated layers of political scheming and hidden motives that everyone else in this palace carries. She sat down beside him, close enough that he could smell a faint scent like flowers. "I've been isolated since I took the throne, Jake. My advisors treat me like a child because I'm young and blind. They make decisions in my name without consulting me. Chancellor Thorne is one of the few I trust, but even he keeps secrets. I needed someone outside of all the political games. Someone who has no reason to manipulate me." "So you chose a human," Jake said slowly. "Someone with no connections to Xanthari politics." "Exactly. And someone whose energy showed me he was genuinely good. That's rare, Jake. Rarer than you might think, especially in a place like this." Jake absorbed this information. It made sense in a strange way, but it also meant he was now in the middle of something much more complicated than a simple diplomatic marriage. "You said your advisors make decisions without you." "What kind of decisions?" Lyra's expression darkened. "That's what worries me. Resources are being moved around in ways I don't understand. Military ships are being deployed to places they won't tell me about. Colony worlds in the outer territories have gone silent, and when I ask about it, I'm told everything is fine. But I can sense the lies. I can feel the deception all around me. You think something is wrong with the Empire. I know something is wrong. But I'm trapped in this palace, surrounded by people I can't trust, unable to investigate on my own. That's why I needed you. You're a soldier, yes, but also a diplomat. You know how to ask the right questions, and you have your team who aren't part of our political system." Jake leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. This was much bigger than he'd realized. "So this marriage, it's not just about an alliance between our peoples. It's about you trying to take back control of your own empire." "Yes," Lyra said simply. "I'm sorry to involve you in this without warning. I know it's not fair to you, but I was desperate. And when I sensed your energy, I knew you were my best chance." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Jake said, "I won't lie. This is not what I signed up for. But I meant what I said when I accepted. I'll help you. Not just because humanity needs this alliance, but because what you're describing sounds like corruption, and I don't like people who take advantage of others." Lyra reached out and found his hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you. You have no idea how much that means to me." Jake squeezed back. Her hand was small in his, but he could feel the strength in it. "So what do we do now? Now we rest. Tomorrow we start trying." Jake woke to find sunlight streaming through the crystal walls. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then memory rushed back and he sat up quickly. He was still in the Empress's chambers, lying on the couch where he'd fallen asleep. His Xanthari wedding clothes were wrinkled but intact. "Good morning," Lyra's voice came from across the room. She was already dressed in a simpler gown of pale blue, sitting at a table where breakfast had been laid out. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected," Jake admitted. He stood and stretched, feeling the stiffness in his muscles. "How long have you been awake?" "A few hours. I don't need as much sleep as most people." She gestured to the table. "Come eat. We have a lot to discuss." The food was strange but good. Fruits that tasted like nothing from Earth. Bread that was somehow both sweet and savory. and a drink that cleared his head immediately. As they ate, Lyra explained more about the palace and its workings. There are approximately 200 people who work here regularly, she said. Servants, guards, advisors, and various nobles who have positions at court. Most of them report to Chancellor Thorne or to the members of the High Council. And you don't trust the High Council? I trust that they want what's best for the Empire, Lyra said carefully. But I don't trust that their idea of what's best matches mine. Some of them think I'm too young and inexperienced. Others resent that my family has ruled for so long. And a few, she paused, a few I sense darker motives from. Before Jake could ask more questions, there was a knock at the door. Chancellor Thorne entered, bowing respectfully. Your Majesty. Captain Morrison. I trust you both rested well? Well enough, Lyra replied. What news do you have? The High Council wishes to meet with you and your new consort this afternoon. They have questions about the alliance with humanity and want to understand the captain's role here. Jake and Lyra exchanged glances. We'll be there, Lyra said. Thank you, Chancellor. After Thorne left, Jake contacted his team on the Liberty Dawn using a communication device the Zenthari had provided. Sophie answered immediately. Jake, thank God. We were worried when we didn't hear from you last night. I'm fine. The ceremony went smoothly, but I need you all to come to the palace today. Lyra and I need your help with something. What kind of help? Kate's voice cut in, suspicious as always. I'll explain when you get here. Just come prepared to do some investigating. An hour later, his team arrived at the palace. Jake met them in a private chamber that Lyra had arranged. Ben looked fascinated by everything he saw, his tablet out and recording constantly. Sophie appeared concerned but professional. Kate scanned the room for threats before she even said hello. All right, Kate said once they were alone. What's really going on here? Jake explained everything Lyra had told him about the problems in the Empire. The mysterious resource movements, the silent colony worlds, the advisors who kept her isolated and uninformed. When he finished, his team was quiet. So we're not just here for a treaty, Sophie said slowly. We're here to help solve what might be a major conspiracy. I didn't plan this, Jake said. But now that we're involved, we need to understand what's happening. If the Zenthari Empire is dealing with internal problems, it affects humanity too. We need them stable if they're going to be our allies. Ben was already working on his tablet. I can start researching Zenthari government structures and political history. If there's a pattern to these problems, maybe I can find it in historical records. I'll do medical checks on the Empress, Sophie offered. If someone's trying to manipulate her, they might be using drugs or other means. I should rule that out, Kate nodded slowly. And I'll do security sweeps. Look at guard patterns, check for surveillance, see who's watching who. If there's a conspiracy, there will be signs. Be careful, Jake warned. We're guests here. We can't afford to offend anyone or start an incident. Understood, Kate said. I'll be subtle. The afternoon meeting with the High Council was tense. The council chamber was a grand room with seats arranged in a circle around a central platform, where Lyra and Jake stood. There were 12 council members in total, all older Zenthari with elaborate robes and serious expressions. Lord Vex, the oldest council member, spoke first. His voice was cold and formal. Your Majesty, the council is concerned about your sudden decision to marry this human. While we understand the diplomatic benefits, we question whether proper consideration was given to this choice. Are you questioning my judgment, Lord Vex? Lyra's voice was calm but firm. We question whether you had all the information needed to make such an important decision. Another council member, Lady Mira, said smoothly. Captain Morrison is unknown to us. We know nothing of his background, his capabilities, or his true intentions. Jake felt anger rising but kept his expression neutral. These people were testing him, trying to see if he would react emotionally. My intentions are simple, he said clearly. I want to build a strong alliance between humanity and the Zenthari Empire. An alliance that benefits both our peoples. And what does humanity bring to this alliance? Lord Vex asked. You are a young species with limited territory and resources. What can you offer us that we don't already have? It was a trap question, meant to make humanity seem weak. But Jake had been prepared for this by his training. Humanity brings fresh perspectives and new ideas. We bring adaptability and determination. And we bring friendship, which is something you need given the threats facing your empire. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. What threats? Lady Mira asked, her tone sharp. Chancellor Thorne mentioned the Vrax Collective expanding in this region. Jake said carefully. Surely the Empire could benefit from having more allies in dealing with such threats. The council members exchanged looks. Finally, Lord Vex said, "The Vraks are a minor concern. We have them well in hand. Your fears for the Empire are unnecessary, Captain." But Lyra's posture had changed. Jake could feel her tension, though he didn't understand how. That strange connection from the wedding ceremony was still there, letting him sense her emotions faintly. "The council is dismissed," Lyra said suddenly. "Captain Morrison and I have other matters to attend to." The council members looked surprised but bowed and filed out. Once they were alone, Lyra turned to Jake. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what?" "The lies." When Lord Vex said the Vraks were a minor concern, his energy pattern changed. He was lying. "They're more of a threat than the council is telling me." Over the next several days, Jake and his team worked quietly to uncover the truth. Ben spent hours in the palace archives, translating old documents and searching for patterns. What he found was disturbing. "Look at this," Ben said one evening, showing Jake and Lyra a series of records on his tablet. "Over the past 4 years since you took the throne, there have been 47 accidents involving Imperial officials. That's 10 times the normal rate. And most of the victims were people who served your parents loyally." Lyra's face went pale. 47 people? And no one told me? "The deaths were scattered across the Empire and made to look random," Ben explained. "But when you map them out, there's a pattern. Someone is systematically removing anyone who might be loyal to the old regime." Sophie had made her own discovery. "I ran some tests on the Empress," she told Jake privately. "I found traces of a drug in her system. It's very subtle, but it's there. The drug wouldn't kill her, but it would weaken her psychic abilities and make her more tired and less alert." "Poison?" Jake felt anger burning in his chest. "Slow-acting and hard to detect. It's being delivered in something she consumes regularly. Probably her medication. The palace physicians have been giving her supplements to help with the effects of her blindness. I think that's how they're doing it." "Who would have access to her medication?" "Lots of people. But the physicians all report to the High Council." Kate had been mapping guard movements and surveillance patterns in the palace. What she found was equally troubling. "There are cameras and listening devices everywhere," she reported. "But they're all focused on the Empress's quarters and the areas where loyalist nobles gather. Someone is watching specific people very carefully." Jake put all the pieces together and felt sick. This wasn't just political maneuvering. This was a coordinated effort to control and possibly eliminate the Empress. One night, Ben made a breakthrough. "I found something," he said excitedly, bursting into the chambers where Jake and Lyra were reviewing reports. References to something called the Keepers of the Eternal Flame. They were an ancient order that served the imperial family for thousands of years. "I've heard of them," Lyra said. "But they were disbanded long ago." "Maybe not," Ben said. "I found coded references in recent documents. Someone in the palace has been accessing information about the Keepers. And look at this." He showed them an old text. The Keepers possessed secrets about the royal bloodline. Secrets about psychic powers and genetic heritage. "What kind of secrets?" Jake asked. "That's the thing. The texts are incomplete, but there are references to a hidden vault somewhere beneath the palace, a place where the original genetic matrices are stored." Whatever that means, Lyra went very still. "A vault? I've never heard of such a place." "It would have been kept secret," Ben said. "Knowledge passed only to the ruling family. But if your parents died before they could tell you about it..." The breakthrough came 3 days later, and from an unexpected source. Jake had been training with Kate in one of the palace's lower levels, practicing combat techniques to stay sharp. The exercise helped him think clearly, but when they finished, Kate pointed to a wall that looked slightly different from the others. "That's odd," she said, running her hand over the crystal surface. "The pattern doesn't match. See how these lines converge here?" Jake looked closer. She was right. The wall had a subtle design that seemed to flow toward a central point. "Ben should see this." They brought the linguist down to look at it. Ben's eyes widened as he examined the wall. "These aren't just decorative patterns. They're words. Old Xanthari from thousands of years ago. Give me a few minutes." He worked with his tablet, comparing the symbols to ancient texts. Finally, he said, "It's a poem about eternal flames and hidden knowledge. And I think, yes, this symbol here, it means entrance or gateway." "A gateway to what?" Kate asked. "To the vault," Jake said with certainty. "This is how we get in." They brought Lyra and Chancellor Thorn down to see the wall. Lyra ran her fingers over the surface, her psychic senses reading something the others couldn't. There's energy here. Old energy, sleeping, but I don't know how to wake it. The texts mentioned that only the royal bloodline could open the way, Ben said. Maybe it needs your touch, Your Majesty. Combined with something else. They experimented for an hour with no results. Jake was getting frustrated when he noticed Lyra looking tired. Without thinking, he took her hand to steady her. The moment their hands touched, the wall began to glow. Don't let go, Lyra said urgently. They held hands and pressed their joined palms against the central point of the design. Light spread from that point, racing along the lines in the wall. There was a sound like singing crystal, and then part of the wall simply dissolved, revealing a passage beyond. It needed both of us, Jake realized. The bond from the marriage ceremony. That's why it worked. They descended into the passage, Thorn and Kate leading the way with lights. The stairs went down for what felt like miles, cutting deep into the rock beneath the palace. Finally, they emerged into a massive chamber. Jake had seen many impressive things since arriving on Illithera, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The chamber was filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with light. They formed patterns that hurt to look at, geometries that seemed impossible. In the center stood a platform with what looked like a control panel made of living light. This is incredible, Ben whispered, already recording everything on his tablet. Lyra moved forward as if pulled by invisible strings. Her fingers found the control panel, and images began to appear in the air around them, holographic recordings from long ago. They watched in silence as the history of the Zenthari Empire unfolded before them. But it wasn't the history Jake expected. The images showed the Zenthari meeting another species thousands of years ago, a species that looked remarkably familiar. They were human, or close enough that Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. That's impossible, Kate said. Humans haven't been in space that long. But the images continued. They showed the Zenthari and these ancient humans working together, combining their genetic material in ways that seemed like magic and science mixed together. The narrator's voice, translated by Ben's tablet, explained the reasoning. The universe is entering a new age, the voice said, an age where rigid, specialized species will fail to adapt. We of the Zenthari see our own limitations. Our psychic powers are great, but our culture has become stagnant. The humans we have encountered are weak in psychic ability, but possess incredible adaptability and emotional depth. By combining our peoples, we create something new, something that can survive what is coming. The images showed the results of this genetic program. Hybrid children being born, children who had both Zenthari psychic abilities and human adaptability, and then Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. The royal family of the Zenthari Empire was founded by one of these hybrids. No, Lyra whispered. That can't be right. We're pure Zenthari. Everyone knows that. But the evidence was there in the holographic records. Every ruler of the Zenthari Empire for 10,000 years had carried human DNA. It had been kept secret, hidden even from the Zenthari people themselves, to maintain the mystique and authority of the royal line. This is why they wanted you gone, Thorn said, his voice heavy with realization. Someone discovered this truth. They found out that the royal family isn't pure Zenthari, and they couldn't accept it. Jake's mind was racing. The accident that killed your parents. They were trying to eliminate the entire bloodline because of this secret. But I survived, Lyra said, and they've been trying to weaken me ever since, hoping I would die naturally or be easy to remove when the time came. More images appeared, showing the full extent of the genetic manipulation. The hybrid bloodline had been designed with specific purposes in mind. Enhanced psychic abilities that could be awakened under the right circumstances. Longer lifespans. The ability to form deep bonds with others, creating alliances that transcended normal political relationships. And then came the image that explained everything. It showed the awakening ritual. A member of the royal bloodline could unlock their full genetic potential by bonding completely with another being, preferably one with strong human heritage. The bond would stabilize the hybrid genetics and activate dormant abilities that had been sleeping for generations. That's why you chose Jake, Thorn said to Lyra. Your psychic senses recognized his human energy pattern. On some level, you knew he was what you needed. I didn't know consciously, Lyra said. But yes, something drew me to him. His energy felt like coming home. Jake was trying to process all of this. So you're part human. I'm human. And together we can do what exactly? The holographic images answered his question. They showed what a fully awakened royal could do. The psychic abilities expanded exponentially. The hybrid could perceive reality at a quantum level, manipulate energy fields, and form mental connections across vast distances. They would have the power to reshape the Xanthari Empire itself. This is what the conspirators fear, Thorn said. If you undergo the awakening, Your Majesty, you would become too powerful for them to control or eliminate. That's why they've been searching for this vault. They want to destroy these records and prevent the awakening from ever happening. Can we do it? Jake asked. This awakening ritual, is it even possible? Ben had been studying the controls. According to these records, it's dangerous. The process involves merging consciousness completely, breaking down all mental barriers between two people. If it goes wrong, both participants could die or be permanently damaged. But if it succeeds? Lyra asked. If it succeeds, you become the most powerful Xanthari in history. You gain abilities that haven't been seen since the Empire was founded, and you form a permanent psychic bond with Jake that can never be broken. Jake and Lyra looked at each other. The weight of the decision hung between them. This was so much more than a diplomatic marriage now. This was about the fate of an entire empire, and potentially the relationship between humans and Xanthari for generations to come. Before they could discuss it further, Kate's communication device beeped urgently. She answered it and her face went pale. We have a problem. Sophie just reported that palace guards are moving toward this location. A lot of them. They know we're here, Thorn said grimly. The conspirators must have sensors we didn't detect. They know we found the vault. How long do we have? Jake demanded. 10 minutes, Kate said. Maybe less. Then we need to make a decision now, Lyra said, turning to Jake. Do we try the awakening? Or do we run and hope we get another chance? If you run, they'll never give you another chance, Thorn said. They'll move against you immediately. This is your only opportunity. Jake's mind worked quickly, weighing the risks. If they tried the awakening and failed, they would die. But if they didn't try it, Lyra would remain weak and vulnerable to the conspirators, and eventually they would kill her and destroy any chance of the human-Xanthari alliance. We do it, Jake said. We try the awakening. Lyra nodded. I agree. Whatever happens, we face it together. I'll buy you time, Kate said, already moving toward the entrance with her weapon ready. Ben, Thorn, help me hold them off. The ritual will take approximately 15 minutes, Ben said, reading from the holographic instructions. You need to stand on the central platform and initiate the sequence, then it's up to you to complete the mental merger. Jake and Lyra moved to the platform. The moment they both stepped onto it, light surrounded them, forming a sphere of energy that pulsed with rainbow colors. Are you ready? Lyra asked, and Jake could hear the fear in her voice. No, he admitted. But let's do it anyway. They held hands and closed their eyes. The holographic instructions guided them through the initial steps. They had to lower their mental defenses, opening their minds completely to each other. It was terrifying and intimate in a way Jake had never experienced. He felt Lyra's thoughts beginning to merge with his own. Her memories flowed into him. The love she had for her parents, the terror of the accident that killed them, the loneliness of ruling while blind and manipulated. He saw himself through her psychic senses. Lyra walked through the palace corridors with Jake at her side, and everything had changed. She could see now, truly see in ways she never had before. The crystal walls that had been dark to her for 4 years now blazed with light and color. But more than that, she could see the energy patterns of every living being around her, understanding their intentions and emotions as clearly as reading words on a page. The guards they passed fell to their knees in awe. They could sense the power radiating from their Empress, and it terrified and amazed them in equal measure. Chancellor Thorn walked with them, his expression grave. The High Council has called an emergency meeting. They know something has happened. Lord Vex has already mobilized his personal forces. Let them come, Lyra said calmly. Through her connection with Jake, she felt his steady confidence, his military training keeping them both grounded, despite the overwhelming power they now wielded. It's time for truth. They entered the council chamber to find it in chaos. The 12 council members were arguing among themselves, their voices raised in anger and fear. But the moment Lyra stepped into the room, silence fell like a hammer. Lord Vex stood from his seat, his silver eyes wide with shock. Your eyes. You can see? Yes, Lyra said, her voice clear and strong. I can see many things now, Lord Vex, including the truth about who has been trying to destroy me. She spread her consciousness across the room, reading each council member's energy pattern. Most of them showed confusion and fear, but innocence too. They had not known about the conspiracy, but 5 of them, including Lord Vex and Lady Mira, blazed with guilt and panic. The 5 of you, Lyra said, pointing to the conspirators. You orchestrated my parents' deaths. You've been poisoning me slowly for 4 years. You've been searching for the vault beneath the palace so you could destroy the evidence of my heritage. Lord Vex's face went pale, but he tried to maintain composure. Your Majesty, I don't know what you've been told, but I know the truth, Lyra interrupted, and her voice carried such power that Vex stumbled backward. I know that the royal family carries human heritage in our blood. I know that you discovered this secret and decided that our dynasty must end. And I know that you've been manipulating the Empire towards civil war while keeping me weak and isolated. Lady Mira tried a different approach. The bloodline is impure, she said desperately. The Zenthari people deserve a pure ruler, not a hybrid abomination. Jake felt anger burning in his chest, but Lyra squeezed his hand gently. Through their bond, he felt her sadness rather than rage. She pitied these people in their fear. The Zenthari Empire was built on hybrid strength, Lyra said. For 10,000 years, the royal family has carried both Zenthari and human genetics. This isn't corruption or impurity. This is the foundation of everything we've achieved. Our psychic abilities, our adaptability, our ability to unite diverse peoples, all of it comes from this blending. She gestured, and holographic images from the vault appeared in the air above them, showing the ancient records. The innocent council members gasped as they saw the true history of the Empire. Our ancestors knew that pure species would become stagnant, Lyra continued. They engineered the royal bloodline to combine the best of both peoples. And now, through my bond with Jake, that heritage has awakened fully. I am what the founders intended me to be. One of the innocent council members, Lord Drake, stood up. He was an older man with kind eyes. Your Majesty, if what you say is true, then we have been living a lie for generations. Not a lie, Lyra said gently. A secret kept for protection. But now that secret has been used as a weapon against me, so it's time for the truth to be known to all. Lord Vex made a desperate move. He pulled a weapon from his robes, aiming it at Lyra. This ends now. The Empire will not be ruled by a hybrid. But before he could fire, Jake moved. The awakening had enhanced his speed and reflexes beyond human normal. He disarmed Vex in a single fluid motion and had him pinned before anyone else could react. I wouldn't, Jake said calmly, though his eyes were hard. She's my wife, and I take that very seriously. Kate and a squad of loyal guards rushed into the chamber surrounding the conspirators. Thorn had been busy while they were in the vault, identifying which guards could be trusted and which were working for the conspirators. Take them to secure holding, Lyra ordered. They will stand trial for treason and murder. But they will have a fair trial. That's the difference between us and them. As the conspirators were led away, Lyra turned to the remaining council members. I know this is overwhelming. I know you have questions and concerns. But the Empire is in crisis. The problems you've been hearing about, the silent colony worlds, the resource shortages, the military deployments, all of it, was being orchestrated by the conspirators to weaken us from within. We need to work together to fix what they've broken. Lord Drake nodded slowly. What do you need from us, Your Majesty? Honesty, loyalty, and help rebuilding what was damaged. Starting now. Over the next several hours, Lyra used her expanded psychic abilities to scan the entire palace. She identified every person who had been working with the conspirators, every system that had been corrupted. It was exhausting work, but with Jake's support through their bond, she managed it. They discovered that the colony worlds hadn't gone silent through natural causes. The conspirators had been cutting them off from communication, planning to blame Lyra for the isolation and use it to justify removing her from power. Military forces had been moved away from critical positions, leaving the Empire vulnerable to external threats. But now that the truth was known, Lyra could begin to fix everything. Sophie examined Lyra thoroughly and confirmed what they suspected. The medication she had been taking for 4 years contained slow-acting poison. The palace physicians who had prescribed it were arrested, though most of them claimed they hadn't known what they were doing. The conspirators had manipulated them carefully. "You'll need time to fully recover," Sophie told Lyra. "But the awakening seems to have purged most of the toxins from your system. You're incredibly healthy now, healthier than any Xanthari I've examined." Ben was busy analyzing all the data from the vault, working with Xanthari scientists to understand the full implications of the genetic records. What they found was fascinating. The human DNA in the royal bloodline wasn't from ancient humans who left Earth, Ben explained to Jake and Lyra during a meeting. It was from humans who evolved independently on another world. Parallel evolution created a nearly identical species, and when the Xanthari encountered them thousands of years ago, they saw the potential for hybridization. "So I'm not related to Earth humans exactly," Lyra said. "Not directly, but the genetic similarity is over 98%. For all practical purposes, you are half human, just not Earth human." Jake found this oddly comforting. It made Lyra feel less alien somehow, though he had to laugh at himself for thinking that way. He was in love with her, alien or not. The awakening had made that clear. Their bond went beyond species or genetics now. The question of what to tell the Xanthari people was debated heavily. Some council members thought the truth about the royal bloodline should remain secret, but Lyra disagreed. "Secrets gave the conspirators power," she said firmly. "I won't make that mistake again. The people will know the truth about their empress and their history." She gave a broadcast that reached every world in the Empire. Standing beside Jake with her eyes clear and her power visible even through the transmission, she told her people everything. The ancient hybridization program, the truth about the royal bloodline, the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed the Empire from within. The reaction was mixed. Some Xanthari were outraged by the revelation, others were fascinated, but most simply accepted it, especially when they saw how powerful their empress had become. The proof was in her abilities, in the way she had uncovered the conspiracy and saved the Empire from civil war. And slowly, a new understanding began to spread. The Xanthari Empire had always prided itself on being ancient and pure, but perhaps their true strength came from their ability to adapt and incorporate new ideas. Perhaps the hybrid royal family was not a weakness but the Empire's greatest asset. Jake spent time with his team, making sure they were all safe and processing everything that had happened. "This is going to change humanity's relationship with the Xanthari forever," Sophie said. "You're married to their empress. You've become part of their royal family through this awakening. Earth Command is going to have a lot of questions." "Let them ask," Jake said. "I made my choice. I don't regret it." Kate was more practical. "What happens now? Do you stay here permanently, or will you go back to human space sometimes?" "Both, I think," Jake said. "Lyra and I can move between worlds now. Our bond isn't limited by distance, and humanity needs ambassadors who truly understand the Xanthari. Who better than someone who's bonded to their empress?" Ben was excited about the opportunities for cultural exchange. This opens up so many possibilities. If the ancient hybridization program worked so well, maybe modern humans and Xanthari could form similar partnerships. Not genetic engineering, but cultural and personal bonds that make both peoples stronger. That idea took root quickly. Within weeks, programs were being designed to bring humans and Xanthari together for trade, education, and